Now, let me introduce the moderator and the president of the NATPE Educational Foundation. It's rare sometimes to look at an organization and to think about founding members always staying a part actively in the organization. Well, NATPE celebrated its 50th anniversary with their conference in 2013. We'll have our 51st coming up. And one of the people who helped to found NATPE and is today the president of the NATPE Educational Foundation is Mr. Lou Klein. Mr. Klein will moderate our program today, and you will find his biography, and I will turn the program over to Mr. Klein.
I'm here to guarantee everyone who's here is going to get a job. Now, the reason I can do that is because you're here. There are a lot of students who are, as was described, still with a pillow over their head back in the dorm, sleeping off Friday night. But you're here, and that shows that you have enough ambition, enough desire, I hope enough passion, care enough, put yourself out enough to be successful in this business. If you have that, then I guarantee you'll get a job. And this is a day that can be a great step for you in that direction. I want you to listen to the panelists. I want you to hear just a suggestion, a hint, one little trick that they had up their sleeve which helped them along with their career path. It may not be a major event that they experienced, but just some little twist along the road that enabled them to get ahead. Remember them, think about them, write them down. And I also suggest that you might want to write down any questions that you have, because at the end of the panelists' presentations, you'll have the opportunity to ask either all of them or any one of them questions that you might have, so you might want to write them down so that you remember at the end of the session. I want to point out to you that these 9 individuals could also be in bed with a pillow over their head. Probably might be doing that, except for the fact that they're here to help you. They have already had their careers, moving in their careers, started their careers, but they're here on a Saturday morning as volunteers to help you. And you will be helped if you take their advice and their experiences to heart. So listen to them, pay attention, and you'll be the beneficiary. I thank all of the panelists for getting up Saturday morning and being here, and I'm sure that you too will appreciate their being here as well. Now, this is the way it works. I am not going to introduce each one with a long introduction because they're going to introduce themselves. Each of the panelists will take approximately 10 minutes. They will tell you how they got started, what they do now in their positions, their careers, suggestions to you, and so there's no need for me to do an introduction because that's part of what their presentation is going to be, and each one will be approximately 10 minutes. Halfway through or so, we're going to have a mock job interview. So one of you will be interviewed as though you were applying for your first entry-level job. Listen to it carefully. I hope that the individual who's going to be doing the interview is not going to be easy, because interviews for jobs are not easy. And then we'll finish up with the rest of the panelists, and then you'll have the opportunity of asking questions of any of them. The first speaker, I asked him earlier, I said, when did you graduate? And he said 2011. And I said, and when did you get your first job? And he said 2011. And there's a message in that alone. He said, you know, all these other people on the panel, they've been working at this for a while. But there's a message into this, because you can start right either while you're in school or right after school. This is a business that attracts many young people, as you are, and appreciates young people. And I can tell you, I started in broadcasting some 60 years ago. I couldn't handle broadcasting today with all the changes in technology. So you're being young on the cutting edge of new media gives you a great opportunity to get started. And here's a great example, because Jordan Austin came right out of school and is working at Fox Sports and is about to tell you his experiences. You're on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys? Thanks for coming out. Can you hear me? Okay. How many of you are interested in sports? How many of you are interested in working in sports? How many of you are interested in working in live sports? Okay. Well, that's what I do. I think that's the one thing that possibly separates me from everybody else, is that Fox Sports North is a regional sports network. And I always found those to be even more difficult to get a foot in and to get your start in, because there are so few of them. I graduated from Burnsville High School in 2006, went to St. Cloud State, and graduated from there in 2011. When I got to St. Cloud State, basically what I did was I worked my ass off. I joined, we have a student television station called UTVS, and I joined there my sophomore year, and did everything possible. Shot, edited, produced, wrote, worked in news, worked in sports, worked in alternative shows. Just about everything that I could possibly do, I did. And I learned very early, even within our own student television organization, I learned very early that the more versatile you are, the more desirable you'll be to others. It got to a point where after my first semester, there were producers within the student television organization that were seeking me out to have me work on their shows. So that was really the first lesson that I learned. You know, the more stuff you're able to do, the more people are going to want you, the easier it'll be to get hired. Have you heard of one-man banding? Okay. That's huge right now. If you can go out, shoot, edit, produce your own stories, you'll be looked at much higher than the next person. So that was the biggest thing I learned there. And what happened was we basically had one of these type of situations at St. Cloud State. We had the executive producer, producer, director, and our director of operations come to St. Cloud State and basically in a smaller forum than this come and talk to us. And we are able to ask questions and get basically our questions answered by them. And I went to that, and I asked a couple of questions to the executive producer. What happened was, this was in September 2010. So I asked him a couple of good questions that I thought he liked, or that he said he liked. He contacted my professor and basically said, who was the student that asked these great questions? And professor told him, and basically said, have him contact me if he's interested in an internship. So one instance like that was what was able to get me into the door. So you guys being here is awesome. So he said, contact him if I want an internship. My professor told me. I emailed him, called him, no response, which is typical. So then I went back to my professor and I said, I called him, left him messages, emailed him, and he hasn't responded to me. So was he lying? Was he not really interested, or what's the deal? And he basically said, keep contacting him, keep calling him, keep emailing him, and basically show him how bad you want it. So from September to April, I called, emailed as much as I could. And finally in April, what happened was one of their production assistants was leaving, and it just so happened that I was graduating in May, and so he asked me to drive down to Minneapolis for an interview. Drove down to Minneapolis, got there, we met at a Brugger's Bagels, just across the river on Hennepin and over by, I think it's called Tugs. Regardless, who cares? So I got there 45 minutes early. So I drove an hour, got there early, sat at the Brugger's. How many of you guys brought resumes or demo reels today? Okay. Drove down there, got there ahead of time, had my resumes ready. I had no idea how many people were coming to this thing. Had my laptop ready, had my demo reel ready, everything ready. He shows up, walks in, and buys me breakfast. Okay. I was planning on picking up the check, to be honest with you, just to thank him for the interview. Buys me breakfast. It's himself and the coordinating producer that show up. We sit down, we have a conversation for maybe a half hour. I tell him everything I did at St. Cloud, along with the other freelance work that I did outside leading up to that point. He basically says, do you have a resume? I had that handy. Gave it to him, gave it to the coordinating producer. Gave them each a copy of my demo reel, which I had on DVD, and I also brought my laptop in case they wanted to watch it. Long story short, end of the interview, he says, how would you like to come work for Fox? And trying to be cool as I was, I said, I'd love to, but really inside, I'm jumping up and down screaming. So then, at the time, the office was actually around the corner from the Brugger's that we met at, and so he took me down there, gave me the tour. I met all the other production assistants, producers, everyone that was there, and we sat down in his office. I filled out some paperwork, and I was hired. So before graduation was May 6th. This happened in April. So before I even went to the graduation ceremony, I had a job, which was unreal. 40 hours a week, $12 an hour. It was part luck, part my doing, part taking advantage of an opportunity, and I've been very fortunate. So
It's a great story.
I don't know
It's a great story.
if I'm supposed to say anything else.
Just think about this for a minute. Just because Jordan asked some questions was the opening that eventually led to the recognition and his getting that first job. And not that everybody here who's going to ask a question of the panelists necessarily will get a job tomorrow, but it just takes one little instant, just something special. And of course, being alert, following up, and you also mentioned you had to call and call and call and call, and tenacity. There are really three, you write this down, 3 T's. Talent, and I assume everybody in the room has some talent. Timing, which is a matter, and Jordan mentioned luck, which is timing, and tenacity. 3 T's: talent, timing, and tenacity. So thank you very much.
Yep.
It's a great story. Now, I want you all to know that radio is not dead. There was a time when television started and they said movies are dead. And there was a time when television came and everybody said that radio is dead. And believe me, radio is not dead, and I know that Michael Crusham is going to tell us about radio and about marketing.
Thank you very much. I'm market president for Clear Channel Media and Entertainment. If you'd asked me what the name of our company was a couple of years ago, I would have said Clear Channel. Note, media and entertainment's been added. In Minneapolis, we are a group of 6 stations. These 6 stations reach 2.3 million people a week, which is very comparable, if not as big or bigger than the television. Our company reaches 243 million people per week, and they reach them either through the 850 radio stations that we have, or through our premier radio network, which has Rush Limbaugh, Ryan Seacrest. We have a number of syndicated shows, and when you add that, our radio stations, and you add our affiliates that carry traffic, that's where we come up with the 243 million. And I forgot to also say there's another part of the company that started to blossom about 2.5 years ago called iHeartRadio. And iHeartRadio, we know radio was dead when television came in. Radio was dead when the CD player was put into the car. Radio is dead because of satellite. Radio is dead so many times, but I think it's a cat, and I think we got 5 more lives left. So, anyway, it is an awesome time to be in the business, but it's a very different time. And to talk a little bit more about Clear Channel and radio, in 1970, 93% of all people listened to broadcast radio at some point in time during the week. What do you think the number is in 2013? Well, it's 93% still. Now, obviously the time they're spending listening to radio might be a little bit smaller than it was in 1970 because there were less options. But I want to use a point. I was talking to Mr. Dubois before the meeting, and we had a panel the other day. Here's where radio is going. This is why it's not dead. One of the stations we run, or the Fan, which we have a very good relationship with Fox Sports Network, and we love Sports Live too. The Fan, on an average, middle of the day, Monday through Friday, at any given time will reach 10,800 people in the broadcast week, 12 plus. Now, to put that in perspective, from a 12 plus, that'd be about 7th ranked radio. for radio broadcast. When you take a look at iHeartRadio and the desktop, there's another 3,500 people listening. If you add iHeartRadio mobile, another 1,500. So there's 50% more people listening to the fan in the middle of the day on average. And one could argue that my stats are a little off, but this is, bear with me, this is a logical explanation. It's pretty close. When the Vikings announced on Monday that Josh Freeman was going to be the new quarterback or join the Vikings, when that announcement was made, and I don't know if it was made right about the time we were simulcasting with Fox, our numbers went up 10,000, 6,000 were on the desktop, and 4,000 were on mobile. This is the reality of what's going on. The other thing that's also great about radio is it's probably one of the best companions to social media you've ever had. Because remember, radio's a companion. We always like to say television's a habit, and it's a very big habit. But radio is your friend. And when radio started, you had the telephone was your connectivity to two-way. But now, with social media, the power of the two together, I like to say that we have our bullhorn, which is our broadcast, shouting out. We can direct people to go to their whatever it is, whether we're telling them to go get pizza from Pizza Hut, tell them to text, 6-number code or whatever it is. We're probably in the highest period we ever have, but it's so funny whenever I go out and walk. You poor guy, how you doing it? It's pretty good right now. The other thing that's really interesting about radio is if you looked at iHeartRadio and you were to want to listen to any of the radio stations live, you have your choice of the playlist, which we provide, or you have the option of going to the any of the radio stations. You got a 15-second pre-roll video. So we have video in our business too. It's just not getting behind the mic and talking. You were going back talking about how many skills that you have to have. Right now, when I got into radio, if you could talk decently and you maybe be able to write a piece of copy and you can communicate, you were a candidate. If I had to go back and start over, I better know how to do video. I better be fluent in social media. I better know that whatever's hot now, within about 6 months, will be totally different. And you've got to be staying ahead. If you're on the air, you better know how to shoot video. The more things you know how to do, the more valuable you are. And again, the type of people we're looking for in this exciting industry right now, it's a much more challenging job than it was. And as when you label us radio, I also want to say that we have other divisions in the company. We obviously have our iHeartRadio division. We have people that are out right now. We used to always call it, what a car was, is a radio on wheels. Well, we know now that it's not going to be the only thing in the car anymore. We're going to have literally, you got the computer right in your dashboard, and the choices are we're going to be way more than AM, FM. It's already happening. You got satellite. You're going to have digital radio. You will have iHeart, Pandora, and whatever is in there. We are battling. We have people in our company that are out soliciting with car manufacturers, making sure that with each year, as General Motors and Chevrolet and Ford are bringing out new cars, that we got distribution in the car. We want to make sure we're on the phone, because the phone is, in 2013, to radio what the transistor radio was in 1962. And it's very critical that we have to be where the people are. Somebody asked me the other day, how long will broadcast last? Well, that's a wonderful question. I think it's going to last a lot longer than everybody thinks, but it will morph. At the end of the day, people want product. It's what's coming out of the speakers. It's what's coming off the television that matters. And that's going to be very critical. So jobs that we have in our business, and it's a vibrant business. I've never had more fun than I've had now, and I've been in business, I know you can't believe this, 42 years. It is still a great business. I can't believe I get paid to do it, and my boss said the same thing. But I could ramble on forever, but I will say this. when you're looking for a job, make sure you think of yourself as a brand, that people will remember you. Don't let internet be the only way you connect with whoever you're talking to. This is still a one-on-one personal business. That hasn't changed. I almost fall out of my chair when somebody sends me a thank you note that's a note. Oh, that one gets on the top of the stack, because I don't see those many. A follow-up phone call. I've had interns that we were lucky. We have lots of interns working at the station. And I don't know all of them. I make it a point to try to know all of them. But what I love, it's when they walk in and say, can I have 10 minutes with you? I remember those because we're looking for talent. I got to tell you, I just told you that we need 5 skill set players. You're doing me as much favor, me getting to meet you, as anything I'm going to impart wisdomically on you all. So make a difference, make yourself known. And I think also to chime in what Jordan said, do the job before you get the job. And they'll take notice.
Thank you. Another thing, which you just heard from Michael, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And a note instead of an email makes a difference. Stopping in for 10 minutes, making yourself known makes a difference. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. Now, here's a man I guess many of you know anyhow because he's on the air. I'm sure, have seen him, know of him. He's also the president of NATPE, the chapter here with the Emmy. So next we turn to Jason.
Yes, hi. I'm Jason DeRusha. I am the morning and noon anchor at WCCO TV. Kind of new for me to say that. I've been in that job since June, I think, the beginning of June. It's very funny being at a panel with Jordan, because not too long ago, I remember being on panels where I was kind of the new young kid in the market, and now I've been here for 10 years, and now I'm the old man. And that's kind of how this business goes. I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, and Marquette has a lot in common with St. Cloud, where St. Cloud has this awesome student-run television station, and so did Marquette. And so on my first week at Marquette, I went down to the student TV station and said, I want to do it all. I want to run cameras for the studio. I want to run CG. I want to do audio. Can I pop in the VHS tapes? So I was at the student TV station every day. We had broadcasts every day. And the second semester of my freshman year, I was asked by a friend if I wanted to take over her internship, because she was interning at the local ABC station, which was pretty much on Marquette's campus. And I, of course, was like, yes, I do. And the faculty advisor was like, well, you can't have an internship. You're a freshman. You can't have an internship yet. I said, well, the TV station's going to give me the internship. Like, I think it should be okay with you if it's okay with the TV station. And so he was like, well, don't screw it up. And I'm like, all right, I won't screw it up. And that TV station hired me then as like a part-time, I was hired to do jobs that certainly don't exist anymore. So part of my job was separating scripts. Do you remember the dot matrix printers that would print out like 6? So I know I think you're old enough that maybe you remember what a dot matrix printer was. It's before inkjet. It would go ring, ring, ring. We used to print our shows on that, and they would come out in 6 colors. And so part of my job was running backup teleprompter at WISN TV in Milwaukee. So I was running the real teleprompter during the show, but we had a camera on a conveyor belt, and you would feed the scripts down the conveyor belt in case the teleprompter failed. Right. Now I do sound like the old man of the panel, right? So now, of course, it's all computers. It's all this. But what hasn't changed is the way that you get a job. It really hasn't. These guys both talked about all the skill sets you have. In local TV news, how many people are interested in going into TV news? pretty good, yeah. So, and all of you who raised your hand sports, you should at least take a second and think about the possibility of going into local TV news, because every dude I went to Marquette with wanted to be a sports guy. I urge you to do some quick math. There's 215 markets around the country, 3 television stations at least, maybe 4. Let's say 4 just for fun. That's 8, it's 200 times 4, you've got 800 TV stations. Well, there's only like 2 sports guys at many of those stations. So now you've got 800 stations times 2 is 1,600 sports jobs. Most of them are filled right now. That's not open, right? But there's a hell of a lot more news reporter jobs out there. Okay, so do the math and just think about it as a backup. That's all I'm saying. Because my best friend at college, who was a sports guy, had a very nice career as a news reporter. So it's something to think of. Anyway, so I was a spaz in college. Like, I was that guy. So you think in your college, you're like, yeah, you have one who was just out of control, right? So I worked at the TV station. I worked at the real TV station. I worked in radio. I board-opped indoor soccer games for an AM radio station in Milwaukee, which that is a sweet job, let me tell you, board-hopping Milwaukee Wave soccer games. But I did that because then I got to do like a news update. They let me do a news update at the end of the game. And I'm like, I'm on the radio in Milwaukee. This is amazing. So then I got to fill in at, Soft Favorites, the new 103.7. So then you're like, hey, I'm on the radio in Milwaukee. I get to we only stop the music twice an hour. So I only got to stop the music twice an hour to say something. But like, this was awesome, right? You're doing stuff. Then I interned at ABC News in New York. I interned for Peter Jennings. I, of course, being the spaz, had 2 internships. I split my summer at Primetime Live, which you guys were probably like just like 6 when Sam Donaldson and Diane Sawyer were doing Primetime Live. But it was shocking. It was like a news magazine that was live on the air. That was incredible. So I did that, and I interned at the investigative unit of ABC News the summer of the Oklahoma City bombing, where I got to learn what it takes to be at the very top level of this industry. And then the next summer I interned in Rockford, Illinois, where I got to learn what it was like to be at the bottom of this industry. But it was awesome. So I just kept doing stuff. I'm like looking for opportunities. I'm going to do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And you meet so many people along the way. And then I had my first job at KWQC TV in Davenport, Iowa. So I started in the Quad Cities. And one piece of advice I would give you is that so many college students that I talk with are not willing to move. They want to find a job in Minnesota because they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and they're so in love and I can't imagine moving. I can't leave my boyfriend. All right. Leave your boyfriend. I'm just saying. Leave your boyfriend. You got to move. You got to move. So be open to moving because that opens you to a whole new network of people. If your first job is in Duluth, which is a great idea. Duluth's a great market, a great news market. People come from Duluth and really are prepared. But if you take your first job in some random city, you've now doubled your network, right? So you know the people in Duluth because you interned there, or you know the people in Mankato because you interned there. But double your network. Think about it. Double your network. You go somewhere else, and now you have 2 chances to grab onto the coattails of someone else who gets successful in this business and then can hire you. Because this is a people business. You need to know people. At WCCO, I had an intern named Kate Raditz. Kate Raditz went to the University of Minnesota. Kate tried to be my intern when she was a sophomore, and I hired someone else because I just wasn't impressed. But Kate spent the next year continually emailing me, wearing me down, and I'm like, fine, you can be the intern. And I didn't even do a search the next time. I just asked Kate. Kate was the best intern I've ever worked with, extremely talented. And so today, Kate Raditz is a reporter at WCCO TV, just about 2.5 years after her internship. She is doing a great job at CCO. She is way younger than anybody that we certainly would have hired 10 years ago, But she knew me, she knew the news director, she knew all the players. We knew her talent when she was in college. So after a start in Green Bay, which is an amazing first market to start at, you're like, hey, we have an opening. What about Kate? And so then she was hired. I think the last 5 reporters that we hired at CCO were people we knew or people who knew some other reporter in our station. Now, on the one hand, that sucks, right? You're like, well, that's crap. Like, I'm talented. I should get this job. But journalism is about being able to make connections and break through. And so making connections with an interview subject, making connection with the viewer, if you can't make connection with the dude that's going to hire you, how are you going to make connection with those other people? So, I went on the journey. My journey is a little more traditional than I think things are today, which is funny because my career, I think, is very non-traditional. I'm not the perfectly coiffed TV news anchor. I've always been hearing Michael say that you should be a brand. Today they talk about it that way. When I started, the goal was just to be so memorable that if the station looked to fire people, they'd be like, well, we can't fire Jason. That was always the goal. Today we call that developing your personal brand. Back then it was just, I don't want to get fired. Like, I'm going to be super memorable. But, now, like, I'm already a couple of you have tweeted me this morning. I'm very active on Twitter and social media and all of that. And as Michael said, things in the business change. You have to be ready to roll with it. And you want to be on the front edge if you can. But the truth is, like, we're still hiring people who know how to write, people who break through the camera, break through the screen, connect with viewers, people who are willing to bust their ass and work hard. And that hasn't changed in 15 years. That probably hasn't changed in 42 years. It's all the same. And people, I think, are so focused on the bells and whistles and the new technology and the new this and the new that. And you do need to know way more skill sets, and you do need to be prepared that my first job as a reporter paid me $18,000 a year. That is $9 an hour. That is less than I made working at Rand Park Pool and Water Slide as a high school student. But you do it not for the money. You do it because you love what you do. And if you don't love this, go be an accountant. Go do something else because you have to love it. You do, because the payoff isn't there in money. The payoff is there in the fact that you get to tell amazing stories or be a part of live sporting events that you used to sit in the stands and think like, God, it'd be awesome to do that. Or be a part of that radio station where you remember being the kid in your bedroom with the AM radio on listening to the Wild hockey game. Now it's the FM radio with the Wild hockey game. But you remember those moments and you dream of being a part of it. And that's all the same. So keep at it.
Great. Remember, this business is 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Saturdays, Sundays, 2 a.m. You've got to want to do it, and you've got to be willing to keep that kind of lifestyle. And if you do, again, as you said, you'd be successful. Now, talking about social media, here is the expert, as I understand, Andrew Eklund.
Good morning. Yeah, I know. I am social media, huh? Thank you very much. I'm sort of realizing that my old media is dead jokes probably won't go over very well in this group. And that's not what my message is here today. First of all, how many of you were born after 1990? Oh, God, that sucks. I graduated from St. Olaf College in 1990. I noticed that none of the hats are up here, but if there was a choir robe laying out, that would be the St. Olaf choir robe. And it's interesting, I've spoken on these sorts of panels many times over the years, and people always ask me, well, what did you study in college to prepare you for a career in the internet? And I have to remind them that the popular internet didn't exist when I went to college. This is absolutely true. In fact, we had computer labs, and there were 4 Macs and a bunch of green screens that nobody knew how to use. And I used to do all my papers at 4 in the morning because that's when I could get Mac time. Nobody had them in the room, and there's no Wi-Fi. I mean, blah, blah, blah. I could keep going on and on. And so in 1993 or so, invention of the browser, Mosaic, I just got really hooked by it. I was in the communications business. I was working in marketing communications. I don't know for sure, on the panel here today, I'm the guy I think who represents revenue. These guys create content. I'm in the business of trying to figure out how to make money on that. I was in the marketing communications world, and frankly, mostly print communications, so not a lot of print communications people up here, but I saw a lot of waste, to be honest with you. It was sort of a dirty business, and the internet came along, and I really got hooked. And a lot of my early career took me out to the Bay Area. And so I was sort of honestly at ground zero between 1993, 1994, 95, watching what was happening with the explosion of the web. And I really got hooked. And by 1995, I believe the Twin Cities was about the 6th largest ad market in the country. And if you just go back in the history of time about that, we have more Fortune 500 companies here per capita than any place else in the country. And when media had to get moved around by people, I had to ask these guys what a reel was. You'd walk across, you'd bring your reel, right? And certainly in the business of everything being sort of timeless, we had to figure out how to support all these big companies. And so, it's not a big surprise that we have a lot of big agencies downtown Minneapolis, and then General Mills is just down one highway, and 3M is down the other highway, and Medtronic is up the other highway. Pretty much we had to support this industry. And in 1995, there was very, very few agencies who were doing anything on the web other than, literally when I started Cicerone in 1995, I was 26 years old. I was fully unemployable. I had been given insubordination notices by my previous employers. And so I was just dumb enough to start a company. I figured I couldn't fire myself. This is great. And so, and what was interesting was I was selling against printing companies back then. Printing companies were saying, for example, hey, if you do this print order, we'll give you a web page with that. It was a page metaphor, right? So printing press, page comes off, and a web page of that same brochure. That was the metaphor of the web, and clearly that's not why I got into the business. So fast forward 1,000 years, and here we are. And one of the things that I want to sort of talk about just briefly, because we have a large panel here, is a couple things that I see is that we're really in the business of 3D content, 3D news. What I mean by that is, first of all, I'm a very traditional news person personally. I still get a newspaper every day. I love the newspaper.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I quit getting it for a while, and I really, really missed it. And let me just tell you briefly why. And this is something that I hope all of you sort of take with you. A newspaper is a very serendipitous exercise. You look at the front page, there are 4 stories. There's one story on there you expected to see, and there are 3 or 4 others that you didn't. You turn into the second page, and you read a little bit about Justin Timberlake or Miley Cyrus, some other celebrity news, and then you spend the next hour of your time reading about things that you didn't expect to read and you didn't know about. The problem that I have with the internet, and this is my world, is that it's very self-directed. The problem with being self-directed is that you only find the things that you're interested in. It's the reason why I think politically we're so polarized. I have a real problem with that. When I get done with a newspaper and the news, when I watch the news, I trust that journalists have said this is important, and we have journalistic standards. And media, to me, is just, we should all be very agnostic to that. I could tell you that you're much ahead of the game because you're young and none of this is new to you or scary. There are a lot of newsrooms where everything that you know is a very, very scary thing. And it's scary for a couple of reasons. First of all, because a lot of people don't know how to use the tools, or they misuse the tools and have had their ass given to them by doing a bad tweet at the wrong time. Or that they haven't figured out how to make money. on these other on these media, and so everyone's scared. And the fact is that we're in this world, and again, reading the newspaper, all of a sudden I know everything about Syria, although we haven't heard about Syria in the last 3 weeks. I know everything about what's going on in Washington. I know about, because of syndication, what's happening through all over the world. And you don't get that when you're self-directed. So that's one area that I am particularly concerned about with the internet, and how do we bring back journalism. And I hate to say bring it back, but I believe we've swung way over into the other direction, and I'll spend 1 minute talking about that. I'm very concerned about how we're delivering information on the web and how we're monetizing that information. There's lots of information that is monetized because all of us are addicted to it. How many of you will go and sit through 25 slideshows on BuzzFeed or on any station, because all it does is give you 25 different page views that you monetize and sell to advertisers, and you feel like you just spent 10 minutes of the most worthless time of your life, right? More slideshows, and it's just nothing that's really it's not enhancing your intellect, but it is certainly giving page views. And I don't blame the publishers for that. They have a job to do, and their job is to make money so that they can reinvest that back into journalism. We have a financial crisis in the journalism business, and I fundamentally believe that. There are still a lot of people on the stage, I'm sure, who are making good money, but the newsrooms are getting hit pretty hard in a lot of different, and especially in regional newspapers and so forth. And that, to me, is not a failure of journalism. It's somewhat a failure of us as consumers, that we prefer a slideshow to 2,000 words of news. And lastly, we have sold advertising largely like we sell print advertising, so banner advertising and so forth, which now has a 0.08% click-through rate. We have banner blindness. We don't even see them anymore, and yet that's largely the inventory that we sell. And granted, there's millions and billions of VC money going in to try to solve that problem, and it couldn't happen soon enough. Because until we solve the monetization problem and the how to make money problem, we don't have the resources to solve the journalism problem, or the journalism opportunity, as I like to see it. So I'll pause there. That's what when I wake up every morning, that's the things that I think about. And I care deeply about the news. I care deeply about journalism. I care deeply about our society. And I believe that we're becoming increasingly fragmented, not because we want to, but because it's what's being delivered to us. And really, honestly, it was good old times when there was 1 or 2 newspapers, and there were 4 television stations, and so forth, because at least then we could all agree to something, and we weren't trying to be brainwashed. It was really that journalism had, and still has, for the very good ones, obviously, a point of view that's not partisan, but is for the goodness of society. And I think that's, I'm just waiting for the day for everything to sort of swing back, probably to the middle. Those were my very unprepared remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a break from the panel. Not a break. No, sit. And we're going to have a job interview. And Greg is going to do the introduction. And let me ask the interviewer, be tough. That's the way the that's the way the interviews go. Here, Greg.
You haven't heard turn it on.
Come on up, Steve. Have a seat if you'd like. I'll give you the mic in just a moment. You'll see the information identified in your program, and again, we don't want to spend a lot of time on the introductions. We want to save it for the content. Steve Goodspeed is the news director at WDIO in Duluth. Now, you've heard Duluth mentioned by the panelists this morning. Veteran newsman. He's going to be interviewing Briggs LaSavage. Briggs is a senior at University of St. Thomas. And you will see her bio as well, and you'll see she has the internships under her belt. So, Steve, as Lou said, be tough. And Briggs, just thank you for giving us your time this morning for this.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. And there was some talk about how technology has changed. I'm an alum of the J School here, and in my day, we had to pass a typing test to get into the school. I didn't pass until my third try. In fact, I had to take a college typing class, and then once I passed it, I dropped the course. But 30 words a minute with 10 or fewer mistakes, but those were in the manual typewriter days. So Murphy's changed a couple of times. Also, there was some talk about making the interview tough. The interview in my office probably would be tougher because then you have the privacy of humiliating someone with no one watching. So we're not going to do that this morning because Briggs is the brave soul who's stepped forward here. And the goal isn't to humiliate or make anyone feel uncomfortable, but that is what's going to happen in your real job interviews because the people hiring are trying to find out if you're someone they're going to have on the staff or not. And everybody's reel looks good, and everybody's resume looks good, but that's edited and refined, and you don't find out till you're in the office how someone's going to do. But let me also say that when we're interviewing you, we're rooting for you. We have an opening. We want to fill it. It's been open for a while, probably. We've gone through a stack of resumes and reels. We've called you to the office, to the station, for a bagel, and we're hoping to make this thing work. So look at the person who's interviewing you as being in your corner, and even when you feel dumb or you haven't answered the question right, keep in mind that they want you to do well. Okay. Briggs, thanks for coming to Duluth. I appreciate your driving up.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's like this 12 months a year, sunny skies and green grass.
I am actually from Duluth, yes, so I'm very familiar with the climate.
So I can't fool you.
No, hopefully not.
We know Abe Lincoln was born in a log cabin, became president. Give us kind of a Reader's Digest for you, Briggs. Where were you born and how did you end up here this morning?
Yes, so I am from Duluth. Like I said, I grew up there, and I went to Duluth East High School. So, and then from Duluth East, I went to St. Ben's, and then I transferred after my freshman year for the journalism program at St. Thomas. And when I got to St. Thomas, I started working with Tommy Media, St. Thomas's student-run media website, and that has been a great experience. I've had multiple internships while in school. I interned this summer at KBJR and KDLH in Duluth, and that was a great experience. Mm-hmm. And I am currently an intern at the Office of Governor Mark Dayton as well.
How and when did the light bulb go on that you thought you wanted to be a broadcast journalist?
I think the light bulb went off for me, not necessarily for broadcast right away, but when I was at Duluth East, I was involved in our high school newspaper there, and I think from that experience, I remember getting my first thank you card after a story I wrote in the newspaper, and I was just like, wow, like I can really touch people with things that I'm writing, and I think that was just the key to this is really what I want to do. And then when I got to St. Thomas, I got to experience some video and all this other kind of broadcast journalism stuff, and I realized this is definitely something I want to do. Visual storytelling is so exciting to me, and I'm loving it so far.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit as far as you had exposure to print, now you've seen the video side. What is it you like about the visual nature of broadcasting versus newspaper or radio?
I just feel the visual nature of broadcasting is so compelling for me, and I just know for so many people my age, the visual is so important, and I think it's telling stories that way and people being able to really connect with someone by seeing them and seeing what they're doing is incredibly powerful, and I think it's just one of the best ways to tell stories.
Kind of a big picture question. What do you see as the role or importance of journalism?
I think the role of journalism is just to keep everyone informed. I know there's so many things going on in the world that maybe students, people just in the community in general don't know about, and they can turn on their TV, listen to their radio, anything, and just learn all about all these things that they wouldn't have ever had a chance to know about without journalism.
And we hear about the importance of people being informed, but what if people were not informed? I mean, what's the big deal? Life would go on, wouldn't it?
Life would go on. I just don't think it would be maybe quite as, I don't know exactly the word I'm looking for, but I think people need to know what's going on because it affects them every day, whether it doesn't directly affect them or not. And like you mentioned Abe Lincoln in history, and I think it's important to not repeat those same mistakes that happened in history. So it's like learning about history a little bit, kind of. You're learning about what's going on in the world and maybe what mistakes shouldn't be made. And yeah.
And now you're spending a lot of time in the Twin Cities going to school. You have a chance to see a lot of television newscasts. Would you say that if there any difference between the stations as far as the news they do, and if there is a difference, how would you describe that difference?
Yes, I think there's definitely a difference. With my internship right now with the Office of Governor Mark Dayton, I have the opportunity to kind of watch each different newscast every morning and look for mentions of the governor. And so I have a kind of a good grasp, I think, on the different styles of care, KSTP, WCCO, and Fox as well. I think what I've noticed from the different stations in particular is that KARE 11 does a lot of stories that are very, they're very newsy, obviously, but they also have a ton of really kind of like the heartfelt, people-based stories, where KSTP, I've noticed, is sometimes the more very hard news and that kind of thing. And then I sometimes feel like WCCO falls in the middle of that a little bit.
And how about Channel 9, Fox?
I don't watch Channel 9 as much, but I do notice that they also kind of fall in the middle, and they have a nice balance of the news and the people-based stories that everyone likes to watch.
Okay. Take us into the governor's office a little bit. You monitor the coverage. What are you looking for, and what do you do with the information?
Yep, specifically, we're looking for mentions of the governor, whether it be through different online web-based sources. We have an email that comes with all the different mentions of the governor, and we're supposed to just take those, copy them, and put them into a document. And same with the TV, we look for different mentions and we record them for archive, just in case the office wants to use it for future use and what the governor was talking about on the TV or in the different editorial or news that comes to us in email too.
Just between us, what does the governor say about the media? Does he ever get mad? Just between you and me.
I've only met him one time.
Okay.
He's come down. Well, I guess a couple times he's come down, and he always asks, "Oh, what are they saying about me today?" I remember specifically he came down on the day that there was the Shutterfly groundbreaking in Shakopee, and so he was laughing at himself. Digging up the dirt and shoveling it away. So, yeah.
Do you get a sense if the governor's office looks at the press as the enemy or not?
No, I don't think so. I think they definitely use it as a tool because they want people to be informed. I don't think, specifically in the communications office, it's never, oh, we have a press conference today or anything. I think the office is usually pretty excited to get the news out there and help the media do that.
Now, when we interview people, we often, I've got a couple of pages of questions I run people by. They fill it out. To save some time here, I'll just kind of ask you a few of them orally. Do you know how many congressional districts Minnesota has?
8.
8, very good. And do you know which congressional district you live in and who your congressperson is?
In Duluth, yes, I'm 8, and Rick Nolan, our congressman.
And how many U.S. senators does Minnesota have? Who are they, and what's their party?
2, and Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken, and they're both Democrats.
Very good. How about the manager of the Minnesota Twins?
The general manager is Terry Ryan.
And how about the coach?
The coach is escaping me at the moment.
You're doing very well, so I wouldn't sweat it. Now, you're up in Taconite country, but down south, can you name a couple of important agricultural crops in Minnesota?
Yes, I can. I know that apples are big in Minnesota. I know the Bayfield, I know that's in Wisconsin, but the Bayfield Apple Fest is always a big deal, and I know Duluth has big coverage of apples throughout the year too.
Okay, very good, thank you. And if other answers occur to you, blurt them out any time. That's normally what happens. 5 minutes later, wait, it's such and such. You've had a leadership role at Tommy Media as the news director. That can be challenging sometimes. What do you do when you're the news director and you've got some of the staff members who are coworkers, fellow students, who aren't pulling their weight or doing what's got to be done?
Yeah, that's been definitely a big learning experience for me this year, and in past semesters too. I think that's one thing that I've really been able to take away from this experience working with Tommy Media. When there's an instance, it's working with your peers has been sometimes a little difficult to manage your relationship, maybe as friends too, and then definitely the professional relationship. And I think I've gotten to be pretty good at saying this, Tommy Media is the time where we sit down and we are professional. We don't talk about things that are going on outside of our work relationship, and we try really hard to be really professional in that setting.
Does that always work? Do they always say, "Oh, thank you, Briggs, I've seen the light, I will change"?
No, it doesn't always work. I think that there's times when you have to kind of sit down with someone and just kind of remind them of the relationship that we have professionally, and just say, I'm here to try to help you grow too, and I'm growing at the same time. So we're all trying to do the best we can here to learn. I think it's really important to remember that it's a learning environment, and that we're all trying to learn, myself included, when I'm trying to kind of lead others at the same time.
Well, you've done a great job. Thank you so much for coming to Duluth.
Thank you.
And we'll give you a little tour of the station. You can meet the gang, and we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, a great round of applause to both of them.
Watch her closely, because most people don't do that well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very
And
good.
Steve, what would be that tough question that you would ask them behind closed doors?
Well, there's more on the current events quizzes, the knowledge of what's going on in their community, and people usually do very poorly on that. And a response normally is, I'm so busy with my homework and schoolwork, I don't have time to be even watching the news or reading newspapers. And that's usually kind of a bad sign to me, because you should be reading newspapers and watching newscasts and knowing what's going on, not because it's a requirement of the job, it should just be coming naturally. So if you're not on top of current events because you don't have time for newspapers and television, then you should ask yourself if you really want to be in journalism, because it should come second nature, and you find time for things that are important to you, and if being informed isn't important, you're just in the wrong field. Maybe you should be a brain surgeon or something, but just not a journalist.
Very good. Thank you. From Dick Block.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great, Steve. Thank you very much. And everyone should realize that none of the questions that Steve asked, Briggs had any idea. This was completely ad lib as far as responding, and very poised, and did a great job. Next, we're going to hear about public television from David Gillette. Public television is another aspect of our business, and we're eager to hear about it. David?
Thank you. Okay, so I see a lot of you taking notes, and I actually grew up on a hobby farm, so I can help you out here. Write this down. Corn, soybeans, millet, sorghum, sugar beets, alfalfa, and wheat.
Very nice.
There you go. That's all I know. I think in a lot of ways, listening to the panel today, I'm probably represent maybe someone who's very fortunate to be sitting up here, because a lot of the things you've heard, the paths that people have taken, I didn't follow that road. And I'm going to tell you about some mistakes I've made along the way. But first I'm going to tell you about what I do now, because not a lot of people, I heard them talking about the media outlets that they review in the governor's office, and they didn't mention Twin Cities Public Television. We do so much with the governor's office.
You're in their pocket.
We're in the But so I work on a public affairs show called Almanac. I do some traditional reporting, I do some commentary and analysis, and I also do a lot of production behind the scenes. I'm wrapping up work on a documentary that's going to debut next Friday, and I work on a lot of productions that come out of the Minnesota channel. And so I have a television job that I really love, but the flip side of my life is that, first of all, I'm a complete introvert. Talking in front of people is torture for me. I really don't enjoy it. And yet I love the craft of television, because I see it as craft and as art and constructing something using technology and using your creativity. And I actually wanted to be an illustrator growing up. I'm a cartoonist by training. I've spent most of my life drawing. And I thought I was going to draw children's books when I graduated from college. And I went to the University of Minnesota. So what I thought I would do is tell you 3 really brief stories that got me to where I am today. And in a lot of ways, I see myself as being the result of 3, what I at first thought were 3 really lucky breaks. But in hindsight, I kind of learned the cliche that, well, luck doesn't really happen. You have the preparation to accept the opportunity when it arises. So my first was at the University of Minnesota, right here. I really wanted to draw cartoons for the student newspaper, the Minnesota Daily. And I spent about a whole year drawing sample cartoons. I loved Mike's phrase. He summarized my whole talk by just saying, do your job before you get the job. I spent a year doing the job I wanted, drawing cartoons, trying to refine my craft. And then I finally got the interview at the Daily student paper. And I went in, and the Daily at the time, this is back in 2000, was under fire for sort of an HR PR debacle. I don't remember the specifics, but the HR department had been doing something unethical, and the Daily had come under fire. And the editor-in-chief, who was, of course, a student as well at the time, was just taking calls from national media outlets and really under the gun. And when I came into her office, she was completely beat. She was tired. She was exhausted. She didn't remember why I was there. And so I launched into my big, long-winded speech. Here are my cartoons. I'm laying things out on the table. I'm explaining my process, talking about influences. And I'd been talking for several minutes. And this is I've never told anyone this story in a public setting. And this is honest to God the truth. I'm doing all this. I look up, and she is asleep. she had fallen asleep in her chair. Her head was back. Her mouth was open. And I'm kind of panicking. So I tried all the things. And she wakes up and she goes, "Oh, this is great. So we were talking before. How much were we going to pay you for this?" We hadn't talked about this at all. And so here's my first big break. I said, "Well, to me, I think $80 a cartoon sounds great." She said, "Great. Start next week." And so that was my first big break. That's true. That's an honest story. And so I started drawing cartoons for the University of Minnesota Daily. I loved it. Do you guys still have the network? Does the network still exist in the daily newspaper? This was kind of pre-Twitter in a lot of ways. It was a print version of Twitter where the back page of the Daily would be all sorts of student feedback, these little short snippets people would send in reaction. And so the back page of the newspaper became my tiny strip cartoon. It was called Last Semester at the top of the page. And then an entire page of college kids analyzing and often tearing apart my cartoon. So I'd have 4 panels, and then there would be all this feedback on why it wasn't funny or why it wasn't good. And that was actually a fantastic learning experience for me because it gave me a really tough skin very quickly. I was a pretty sensitive kid growing up, and I really quickly learned that you know, you got to slough this stuff off, and if you can't, just go for a really long run until it doesn't hurt anymore. And it's the truth. And so after leaving the Daily, it was a tough job market in 2011. I really wanted to learn more about the craft of television. I'd been working with video cameras my whole life. I had an uncle who was really supportive and had kept tools in my hands growing up. And so I went back to my public access facility in my hometown and just started working there. Some friends and I got together, and we started producing a sketch comedy show. It was called Nate on Drums. We'd produce one a week. It would air on Thursday nights. And after about a year doing this, we were having a lot of fun, and we were kind of proud of the content we were making. And we had this dream, you know, why don't we see if we can take it to the next level? And I'm so glad you're going to tour KSTP today, because I want you to think of me when you go there. When you walk into KSTP, there's two sets of doors. There's a big front silver door, and then a few steps inside, there's a set of glass doors. Remember those glass doors, because I literally came tearing through with my demo disc, so nervous, just like I am right now talking to you guys, so nervous, shaking, that I plowed right into those glass doors in front of Mike Smith, the programming director at the time, who I hear isn't there anymore. That was my first impression. So, I mean, you have to remember, I'm at the Daily and the woman fell asleep. And so now here I am at KSTP walking into the glass doors in front of the guy who's going to be my boss.
Is it on YouTube?
It was pre-YouTube, actually. I'm a little older than I look. And we were really fortunate that Hubbard and KSTP were making a commitment to local programming at the time. They liked the content we had made. And again, the theme I keep hitting back on is I had spent another year, as Mike said, making the show before I pitched it. I'd spent a lot of time doing the job. And the show was picked up. It ran for about 2 or 3 years, late night on KSTC 45. And it was one of the best times of my life. It was a creative time. We had free reign over the content. It was fantastic. And then, third lucky break, I got a call one day from Bill Hanley, Vice President at Twin Cities Public Television, saying, you know, we're really hungry to incorporate more youth voices on our air, and we'd love to just talk to you about what you've been doing with KSTP. We went in, we talked about it, and I learned at the time they were really curious about our monetization model, how we were making it work, and it was a barter system. We were selling ad time during the show. And I happened to be a public affairs junkie. I loved Almanac, the show I work for. I knew a lot about it. I also did my homework before the interview. And I said, you know, there's this part of the show I do, these illustrated commentary pieces, back to my cartooning experience and back to my desire to do illustration. And I think there's a chance that what I do in these illustrated comedy pieces could work for Almanac, because you sort of have a goofy sense of humor and you have the terrain for that. And they gave me a shot. And I basically started what I would describe as the longest job interview in history, because for about 3.5 years, on just a contract basis, I was doing these once a month essays for public television. They'd appear on the monologue slot on the public affairs show. And over time, I guess because the people I worked with believed in me and gave me opportunities, I've been able to grow into more of the reporting and the other things that I do now. And so I guess just to wrap up, looking back, I always felt, okay, there's these 3 lucky breaks that kind of always took me to the next step. But then when I really am honest, I spent years before each one of those serendipitous occasions honing my craft. And that's the only thing I'll really take credit for up here. I'm not great at the networking. I'm not great at the meeting people part, but I will work so hard behind the scenes you can't believe it. I spent a good chunk of my 20s just staring at a Mac, trying to make myself a better editor and trying to make my cartoons work in a style that I thought was appealing. And that's what's allowed me to do what I do today. I love it. Wherever my career goes next, I have a feeling, based on what I've learned so far, it'll be because I've done the work to prepare me for whatever that next step is. And I think that's everything I wrote on my envelope, so I guess that's it.
Thank you, David. Now we're going to hear from a techie. Charlene?
Hi. I'm Charlene Hunter. I'm a master control operator at KSTP. I don't have a big, long story like these guys have. I started out in Memphis, Tennessee, went to the University of Memphis. It used to be Memphis State University. got a job working in the public access. Sorry, I'm really nervous here. Worked with a friend of mine who started actually a cable show talking about the highlights, the city life in Memphis. And from there, my church actually started broadcasting. And they started a control room with decos and, with chyrons and all the major equipment, really, really good equipment. And I trained myself on chyron. And then one of my church members was also a director at WREG TV in Memphis. And she recommended that I try and get a job there. And that was my step into TV. I was taking communications classes at the University of Memphis and loved it, totally loved it. And then started the job there at WREG TV, and that got me hooked. It's totally, I didn't graduate, which I'm not recommending. But it brought me to a place where I love news, because I wanted to be in film. But it brought me to a place where I started becoming a news junkie. And I'm just a tech out there, you know. So then I started it. I met my husband online, got married, moved here, got a job at KSTP as a floor person and a chyron op. I worked that for about 5 years, and then I believe in 2001 was when KSTC started up. Okay, it's been a while. And so it was really exciting because we were starting this, this new station, and then 911 hit, and they laid off a lot of people. And I was worried that I was gonna be one of them, but no, they merged KSTC and KSTP, and we were working out of 2 control rooms, and they merged them into 1 control room. After that, I was a deco op for a while. We went from chyron to deco. Anybody in here interested in working behind the scenes? Wow, nice. It's good to know. I worked as a, like I said, a chyron operator, and then we moved to deco, and I'm really a tech geek, so anything that I could learn that was technology related, I was learning it. I went to, I learned how to do commercial editing, commercial production, commercial writing. And from there, I also learned how to technical direct. And for a while, for about 3 years, I was technical directing. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. And from there on to master control. Master control is where I am now, and it's a major, major thing now. Master control used to be, tapes and reels, and now we're down to an automated system. Master control, we used to have 2 separate master controls, now everything is one. We have 7 stations that we monitor. KSAX being one of them, MeTV, Antenna, This TV. Me, This, Antenna, KSAX, KSTP, KSTC, and we're all in one room. You'll see that when you get there. I can explain it more when you get there, if most of you are coming to see it. We also monitor transmitter, making sure the station stays on air. We also take in, we're also not just master control now, we're also taking in feeds from satellites. Also, we are tuning in live trucks and making sure that they are, that we're staying on the air and that the reporters are getting in their feeds. We take in, instead of reporters and the photogs recording things and then bringing them back to the station, we are so automated now that we're bringing everything in through the wire. When they record something, we're automatically ingesting now. instead of it being all beta tapes. And it's a really awesome thing now. You can immediately get your video from out in the field into the station. Also with the master control, we are the last bastion. We are the last thing on the air. If we are not there, we are not monitoring, the station isn't on the air. I think that's all. Really, really nervous. If we have questions, then I'll be able to answer you more. But one thing, like Jason says here, if you were under master control, you're really introverted.
Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here interested in making money?
Wrong place.
Just checking. An aspect of our business is sales, and I would say, as a group, as a part of the business, sales is where you make money. And so we're going to hear from Paula, who's going to tell us how to make money. Paula Pettin.
Thanks, everybody. I am the general manager of CW23 here in the Twin Cities, and my path began long ago. My parents' remote, this was before we had remotes, and so when they wanted to watch another station, it was one of us kids that got up and changed that one little TV. And I was in love with television. I was also in love with radio. I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh, and they had a very, very famous morning disc jockey. The guy's name was Reed Cordick, and he had 100,000 people in his studio every morning. I'm convinced of that, because he had a million voices that got into your head, got your imagination going. He would have one little element where he would say, you know, if I'm talking about management and how ugly they are and tough on us today, I better tell you that I got to speak really quiet because the walls have ears here, and 1,000 voices would go, no we don't, no we don't, no we don't. So the passion for me of broadcasting of both radio and television started before I even knew what would happen in my life. Graduated from high school and had an opportunity to work for my brother who was living overseas in Spain. Came back, did my undergraduate in 2 years at the University of Pittsburgh, where I interned at WQED in Pittsburgh. First on the Mr. Rogers show as a floor manager. Easy. You had 2 stayed cameras, one on Mr. Rogers and then one on one of the other characters. So it was either this camera or this camera. I got that one. And then I had an opportunity then to go to what was the forerunner for the McNeil-Lehrer report, and it was the first 1-hour news show in the market, in that market anyhow, and the excitement, the passion, the energy that went on in a master control room when a live broadcast is going is an energy. If any of you have seen Newsroom on cable TV, it captures the energy of what really goes on in a lot of studios, and so my hat's off to all the real talent in this room, which are the folks that are in front of that camera. I quickly realized that was not going to be a route for me, but I went on to finish my graduate work at Penn State, where I did an MA in communications and 1 credit shy of an MBA. So accepted a position teaching at Indiana State University, teaching broadcasting. And they're earning $10,200 a year. And I was elated because I had a Volkswagen car payment and I could make that and pay my rent. And in the time there, one of the radio stations asked if I had any interest in sales, and I said, sure, over the summer, because I wasn't teaching, I had no classes then. And quickly learned that, boy, I could make a lot of money at the 3rd radio station in a 2 radio station market. Went on to the university was really gracious to me and allowed me to both teach and sell. And so I was able to combine for the students in my class some real opportunities for them to get some practical experience. Left Terre Haute, Indiana for Chicago, Illinois, where I started my real broadcast career in terms of sales. Selling first radio and then with CBS television for several years. And then somebody who I had worked with in a previous life bought some radio stations, asked me if I'd like to be a general manager in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I said, yeah, that sounds interesting. Where I learned a whole lot about all the other areas that go in what Mike does in bringing together the engineering, the talent, the sales, because what I knew was sales. And so it was a great experience, a great opportunity for me to do that. Came back to Milwaukee to run another radio station there, which actually was at 103. I'm the one who took it from rocker to Breezen Radio, where you ended up. And I was also at WISN, where I did new business development for them for a number of years. So as you can see, this is all interconnected. You'll find at the end of my story, I can touch base with almost everybody here. And that is the truth. It's the connections. And ended up, had an opportunity to go after digging out of snow for a number of years in Chicago to Texas, where I became one of the people who built Univision Television to the element that it is today. And that was for 14 years as an SVP, all in sales, with Univision. And where I go back is I had the opportunity to live in Spain. Who knew that so many years later my Spanish language from there would help me out working at Univision? It wasn't a grand design. It was an opportunity that I just could not pass up, and loved every minute of it. Univision sold to a group of limited partners, and I had an opportunity to go on to be a COO of a small affiliate group in Spanish language, Una vez más. Did that until I came here and longed for the snow and said, hey, I got to get back up north and to run this station. My whole career is built on building things, building something that wasn't to something that is. And it is all built on people and experience. And I urge each of you to consider a sales opportunity, because there aren't that many opportunities in front of the camera. But no matter who you interview with, be prepared. And most importantly, ask questions. Unfortunately, what we didn't see here in the interview example was the interviewee trying to hone in and understand what the needs are of that employer. And if you have the thought process to try and understand what that employer is specifically looking for, then you can point to the achievements within your own time, your own career, as to what might fit their needs. So I would encourage you to do that, because an interview needs to be a two-way street. It also allows the person interviewing to understand your level of intellect, your level of knowledge, and your level of inquisitiveness. I think every one of us up here who is in a position to hire wants somebody who's inquisitive. I want somebody who has a mind and is going to bring some energy and something different to my group, and raise our level and raise the bar a whole lot. So I hope that's some insight and helps some of you along the way. And I also do want to put one more plug in. There will be at the job fair, we'll have a table out there, but also AWM, which is the Alliance of Women in Media, will also have a recruiting table out there as well. And for networking purposes, I encourage all of you. It is not a women's only group. It is open to men and women. And Mike Crusham just was on the panel this past week on Thursday for the general managers. But it's a great opportunity for all of you to network with people within the industry here in this marketplace. So I would recommend, if you have the time, energy, and interest, to please do so. So bring passion.
Thank you, Paula. Earlier you saw a real honest-to-goodness Emmy, and our next speaker has 5 Emmys. Vanita is a journalist, and Vanita, tell us about your career and about 5 Emmys.
I was lucky. I worked with great people behind the scenes that helped me get those Emmys. I remember being in your seat, so it's really exciting to see all your faces. And I must say, the girl who was up here, lady who was up here doing the interview, great job. Really, that's got to be so hard. And it's nice to see that you were able to answer some of those questions, because I worry there are people entering this business that couldn't. So kudos to you for that. Some key points I want to make are: be persistent, be positive, and be flexible. And that's what's helped me throughout my career. I grew up in Kansas, and I went to college at Boston University. I double majored in broadcast journalism and political science. And one of the things I did that may help you was I targeted areas of the country that I wanted to work. And for me, I knew I didn't want to live in the South. The heat, that kind of stuff was not for me. So I targeted markets that were near big cities in the north. So I targeted smaller markets around Boston. I targeted smaller markets around Chicago and smaller markets around Minneapolis. I'm a huge hockey fan, so I wanted to be in an area where they liked hockey. So I knew the South wasn't going to be it for me, at least back then. So I figured out Fargo, North Dakota might be a good opportunity for me. I would assume that not a lot of people are clamoring to be in Fargo, North Dakota. So I just hammered them with resumes, and back then we sent tapes. You didn't have to send just a link. You'd actually have to this huge 3/4-inch tape, and it would cost a lot of money, and you'd mail it to the news directors. And so I said, I want to work in Fargo. And finally, a news director said, all right, I have an opening. I want you to be our weekend weather anchor. Now, keep in mind, I was a news person. I thought, weather? I know nothing about weather. But at that point, I was ready to sweep floors. Whatever you want me to do, I will do. And I did. I was a weekend weather anchor in Fargo, North Dakota, which wasn't too hard. It's cold and snowy and windy. It really wasn't that hard to predict. So I was very successful at that. It wasn't, you looked at the little wire copy and you did your little thing and you were done. I did that for 2 years, and then I went to Omaha, Nebraska for 3, WOWT in Omaha. And I was trying to get to Minneapolis. After being in Fargo and being exposed to Minneapolis, I thought, this is where I want to live. And the last year of my 3 years at Omaha, I would drive up to Minneapolis and just set up appointments ahead of time and meet with the news directors. And I would talk to them, and I did a lot of research about what was going on in the news market, and I just said, keep me in mind. And that year of coming up here and really meeting the news directors, and I'm talking, I was in CCO's office, CARE's office, and KSTP. At the time, Fox wasn't really up and running with a real strong news operation. So those three, I just kept saying, hire me, hire me, hire me. Finally, the news director at KSTP said, quit bugging me, I will hire you. You know, he knew that I wanted the job here, and finally, when an opening came up, he said, who else would I ask, you know, because I was the one saying, I want to work for you. So, gosh, I was at KSTP TV for almost 18 years, which is kind of unheard of in the television business. You don't really stay at a place that long. So I feel really fortunate that I've had that opportunity there. I started out as a weekend reporter. The weekend anchor left, Angela Davis, who's now at CCO. She left to go to Dallas, so I got her job. She came back and did mornings with us. When she left again, I got her job. So I always feel like whenever Angela Davis leaves a job, I should get her job. But it's always worked out that way. But what I did was I just sort of snuck my way up. You know, I was always there. I was always working hard. I wasn't the glamorous choice coming in from the outside, but I little by little made my way up at KSTP, and it was a wonderful almost 18 years. I pretty much anchored every newscast. I covered every part of the state, covering big stories. I did every shift. I woke up at 3 in the morning like Jason does now. I did weekend nights, and I got to experience it all. But the part that I want to tell you about, the be positive, be flexible. You can sit in these chairs and you will have these fabulous dreams. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't reach that dream, because early on in my career, when I was trying to find that first job, I got so many rejections. And you're going to have people say things to you that you're not even going to believe that they're saying to you, things that are negative, people telling you that you can't do what you want to do. Don't believe it, because I heard that, a lot of that, and I still reached my goal and my dream of being a television anchor in a big market, and I was able to do it, and you can too. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't, because you can. You just have to be persistent, and you have to be positive, and you have to develop a thick skin. You can't let anyone's critique or anyone's comment about you make you believe that you can't do something. When I hit about 16 years at KSTP, I was called in and told they didn't want me anymore, and they were going to give me a year to find a job. That's the reality of our business. I'm not bitter about it. I knew there would be, come a day that I may not be able to be in television anymore. So that's where flexibility comes in. You can't be negative. You can't be bitter. You just have to say, all right, it was a wonderful ride. What's next? So I explored many different opportunities. I looked at the skill set that I had. I looked inside the business and outside the business, and voila, here I am at the Star Tribune. What you might find interesting is going from television to newspaper. How does that work? It's a wonderful transition. I do the video. What you do, you go to startribune.com. If you look at the video section, I'm anchoring a lot of their videos. What I will do is a photographer will go out into the field, get some video, and I will put together a little story, and that'll go on startribune.com. If you click on it, we make money on it. So it's a wonderful way to leverage the resources of the Star Tribune, 200 plus reporters who have these amazing contacts, who have amazing connections in their beats, and marry that with my video ability, my experience in television. You put that together, and that's kind of the future. When something big happens, you're not waiting till the 6 o'clock news. You're not waiting till the newspaper the next morning. You're going online, or you're checking Twitter, and that's where I come in, and that's where the Star Tribune comes in. This is the future, and it's that flexibility that will make you successful. If you can think outside the box and say it isn't always about that newspaper the next morning, or that radio broadcast, or that television newscast, those are all important. But let's think of how people are getting their news, and this is one way. I approached the Star Tribune and said, listen, I see you're trying to expand your video coverage. You have an amazing news operation, Pulitzer Prize-winning news operation. Let me be a part of that and bring my broadcast knowledge and ability to that. And they were great. They were very excited to have me. And what's really fun is I get to bring my video experience and also learn a new business. Newspaper is totally different. They have a different way of thinking. They don't think visually. I mean, they have still photographers, but they're not thinking get videos. So I'm teaching and I'm learning and I'm growing, and it's a wonderful, wonderful next step for me. So when I look back on my career, I always look at every experience as being something positive that leads me to the next thing. I don't have to get up at 3 in the morning anymore, which is really positive. I have really regular hours. I have a wonderful work environment, as I did through my career, and it's something new. And I think as you move through your career, as you start off and move, always remember that. It's that flexibility, it's that positive attitude, and it's that persistence that will get you to your next job and to your goal. And again, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it.
Great advice, great advice. Buan Shang.
Last but not least, my name is Bua, and I'm a reporter slash multimedia journalist slash one-man band slash one-woman band slash backpack journalist for KARE 11. I've been there for 3 years, and I feel extremely fortunate and very lucky to be there, to be here in front of you guys, and to be a part of this panel, because my life could have ended up very differently. I was born in a Thai refugee camp to a father who had a lot of ambition, but not a lot of opportunities, and a mother who had a big heart, but couldn't even write her own name. So from the get-go, I think most stories like that end up, poor girl lives in a remote village in Thailand. But we were fortunate enough to be sponsored by a Lutheran church, and my family resettled to the States in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, of all places, in 1987. So I was about a year old. I don't remember much about the camp, but when I look at pictures of myself in the camp, I really look like a child from one of those ads where they ask, for $1 a day, you can feed this child. That's what I look like. When we got to the States, we had this idea of reaching the American dream, right? But it wasn't easy. I was a free and reduced lunch girl. We lived in poverty. And we remember life in moments, right? And TV is about capturing moments. And my moment for me when I thought, you know, I can do better, and I have dreams that can come true, was we were driving home from middle school, and my mom stopped barely 2 blocks away from school and got out of the car. And I was like, why is she getting out of the car? And it was recycling day, and everyone had their cans out on the curb. And she went out and started collecting cans. And in middle school is not easy, but imagine being in middle school and poor. And all these kids were walking by making fun of my mother as I sat in the car and wanted to bury my face and cry because I was so embarrassed. I was like, this is so embarrassing, what am I gonna do? And that was my moment, and I thought, you know what? I can do better, and education is going to be my ticket out of poverty. And so when I was 18, I moved away from home and became the first person in my family to go to college. But once I got here, I had a lot of freedom that I didn't know how to handle. So my first few years in the J school here at the U were not very good. I was an average, below average student, but the moment I got my hand on a camera and was able to put video and words together, I realized the power of media. And I realized what an awesome thing I could be doing, and share my family story, share my parents' story, share the stories of other people who maybe were like me. And I worked really hard the last 2 years here and became the top of my class, graduated, was nominated for a college Emmy, and I thought, great. I'm on a road to success. And I graduated in 2008 at the height of the recession, and what I thought was going to be an easy journey for me because, hey, I had this awesome resume and I could say I was a regionally nominated Emmy journalist now, right? That wasn't the case. I spent an entire year trying to get a job, but nobody would hire me because here we're in the recession, right? And I sent emails, I spent resumes. I went to the post office every day trying to get a job, but it ended up being my first job out of college was in a call center with AT&T Uverse. I was technical support, and they paid me $12 an hour. It was the worst job of my life. And what made it even worse was having to sit back and watch fellow graduates get jobs. I interviewed for a job in Sioux Falls with Kelloland, and was talking to a fellow student, and he was asking me all these questions about, well, what did they ask you? And how did you respond, and how did you think of the team? Come to find out later, they were also interviewing him for the job. And he got it, and I didn't. And I felt like crap. But I never gave up. I don't know what it was, but I never gave up. I cried a lot, but I never gave up because I knew I was better. And I knew that everything that I was experiencing now was hopefully for a reason, is what I believed, and it got me through it. Finally, in May of the following, so exactly almost a year after I graduated college, I get this phone call from KVGR, the NBC affiliate in Duluth. She said, the news director there, Barbara Wild, said, do you want to come down for a job interview? We have an opening in our Hibbing bureau. I had no idea where Hibbing was, but I said, yes, I will come down there, and I would love to interview for your job. And being a good reporter, right, I did all my research about what Hibbing was, and I'm learning, okay, mining, taconite, all right, Iron Range, okay. And all I knew about that area was everything I read in Wikipedia. So I go in for my job interview, and she offered me the job for $10 an hour. And I said, yes, I will take it. So I moved to Hibbing, worked the Iron Range. I was there. I probably lived in Hibbing for, I want to say 4 months or something like that. But I worked really hard, and it was a very tough community to break into because I'm a little Asian girl, and up there, it's a lot of Northern European and very hard miners. And it was a very tough audience, if you will, to break into. But what I noticed was they were just as curious about me as I was about them. So I think having that in mind made them like me a little bit more. It was okay for them to call me Oriental. I didn't find that offensive because that was just the way it was up there. That was an educational opportunity for them and for me, and that's how I built bridges. Apparently my news director thought I did a nice enough job in Hibbing that she brought me down to Duluth. And that's when my journey got a little crazy because I was in Duluth. I worked for KVGR for maybe a total of a year and a half before Carol Levin called and said, hey, do you want a job? And when you're 24 and Carol Levin calls you, what? So I came in, interviewed for the job at CARE, and I think what made me attractive was the fact that I could shoot, wasn't too terrible at it, and I could edit. And I would say right now, as I think Jordan mentioned before, those are skills, even if in the long run you don't want to shoot or edit, those are skills that will definitely help you get your foot in the door. So I got the job at Carol Levin. I thought, great, this is so exciting. I spent, a year, I felt behind everybody, and here I am now at Carol Levin. Awesome. And I realized when I got here that it would be a tough go for me because I was so young. And I think people were extremely nervous about what is this 24-year-old doing in here. One of the comments that was made about me when I started was, what, are we hiring cashiers from Best Buy to be reporters with us now? And like I said, TV is made of moments, right? And I knew that I had to prove myself. I knew I had to put my head down and work hard. And I feel like Jason and I were just talking about our first moments here, that you prove yourself to your colleagues and you earn their respect, because I get it. I get working 15 years and then seeing a young 20-something come in. I get it. So for me, I was lucky in that that was an election cycle when I started, 2010. And so I started in October, and then November, just the next month, I covered the 8th district race. And I went live, and I think people weren't sure how to take me because I was so young, or how uninformed or informed I was. And I thought we had stellar coverage that night, and I thought I did a good job of hustling. But it wasn't until the next day when our anchor stopped me and said, "Hey, you did a really nice job. We were very impressed with you, and we can't wait to see where you go." And that was my moment, and I could breathe a little easier, because then I thought, okay, I think I did something right, and I think I'm gonna be okay. And it hasn't been easy. I'm 27 now, still very young, and I know that. I've learned a lot, but I also have earned the respect of my colleagues, that it's more of it's a teaching and learning relationship. They teach me things that I don't know, and I teach them things that they don't know. And I think that there is value in building that relationship, because I think sometimes people think, oh, well, look at this young kid coming and taking over my job. It's not that at all. We're here, we're gonna be a team, and we're gonna put a great product out together. And I've spent the last 3 years trying to build that. And now I feel like when I come to the table, people take me seriously. When I come to the table, I have something to offer, and my voice is one of value in my newsroom. If I had to go back, though, and talk to my 21, 22-year-old self, what I would say is, one, your journey is yours alone. It is not a race to get to the top. I get a lot of emails from young journalists starting out. Hey, so-and-so, my friend who graduated a year earlier than me, is now working at WCCO, or is now working at LA. And I just feel really bad about myself. What am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. Take the time to be, whatever market you are, whether you're in Duluth, you're in Mankato, you're in whatever, that's a time to learn and to grow. You don't worry about where this is going. This is your journey. So if you feel bad about yourself that you're not moving as fast as your colleagues are, or as your fellow students are, don't worry about it. Things will be okay. You're going at your own pace, and as long as you're at a place where you feel like you're able to grow and learn, that is a good place to be. And also picking back off of what Vanita said about finding opportunities and not letting anyone tell you that you can't do it. I've been told no so many times, but what it taught me was to go to the people who will say yes to me. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that so far. I don't know where I'm going yet. I'm having a lot of fun at CARE. I'm going to stay there as long as they'll have me and grow as much as I can. But the door's always open. I think that's what makes a good journalist in this day and age, when everything is changing so quickly. That's my story.
That's a wonderful and a beautiful message. Thank you. The panel's been great. Have they been great? Now it's your chance to ask the panel the questions that are on your mind. And Nick, you're, first of all, the producer of all of this, all that you've heard and all that you've seen and all of the arrangements and all of the recruitment of the panel and you and everything, is this man right here, Dick Block.
Hello. Every semester at USC, I take a vote. Shall I leave the hat on or take it off? Those in favor of leaving it on, please raise your hand. The hat stays on. Who has a question? You have a question? First question.
I was raising I love the hat.
You love the hat? $15? All right, no. Who's going to ask the first question? There we go. Okay. No pitches. Okay, question.
All right.
Many of you guys have talked about like a newsreel and how you sent many of your newsreels out and you got that going. But I was wondering if you guys had any advice or what goes into making a strong newsreel and how you go about making it and deciding what you put into it and what exactly makes one that makes you stand apart from somebody else who sends one in.
Well, resume tapes also haven't changed that much. It's pretty similar as to when we started out. Other than obviously you guys get to do it way cheaper. God, I spent so much money on sending out VHS tapes in my career. Important to know, Bua talking about getting all the no's. Like, I have sent out tapes for probably 500 jobs in my career, and I swear I've only had 4 interviews. 3 of them said yes, and I worked at those 3 places. 1 said no. At WMBD in Peoria, you were dead to me. But that's a lot of no. That's not even a lot of no. That's a lot of ignore, okay? That's a lot of like, I don't even know if they watched it or not. So something to bear in mind. It's like buying a house, right? Or selling a house. If you're selling a house, you only need 1 person to want to buy it. It's the same with you and your career. So don't be discouraged by 400 people ignoring you. You'll show them someday. But the reel is the same. It starts with probably 45 seconds to a minute of stand-ups, on-camera stand-ups. The formula I always tell people is the first time you're on camera, the first one, you need to sound the best because the news director is not watching at that point. They're reading their email, they're checking their iPhone. So you need a strong voice for number 1. I also tell people you should look your hottest in the first one. You gotta look good, it's TV, but the voice is really important because you command their attention. But you do those stand-ups and then 3 good stories, 3 good packages, and then you go, oh, we have a news director who can tell you what he's looking for in reels. But that's pretty much it. Like, the reality is, as Steve said, like anyone can have a tape that looks good, right? Because you can go, honest to God, like you could shoot a tape in 2 days. You just keep changing your shirt. You go do a bunch of stand-ups. You could do it pretty quickly if you want to. But whether you have the goods to back it up, that comes through the interview and the resume and the other stuff.
Well, I mean,
add to that, Steve?
Well, I have seen resume tapes where an anchor tape where it's supposedly a newscast, but they have changed shirts, so they've maybe had 2 good stories in a row and they blow the rest, so they've culminated 9 good stories out of 3 newscasts. But a lot of the tapes do have the stand-up montage at the top, and if you can be a model for GQ, do it. But if you don't, like me, I always try to put the best samples of my work, which usually was writing and storytelling. I didn't want to hit the eject button once they saw my face in the first 10 seconds. So I tried to fool them, and they maybe would hear me for a while and think, this guy maybe can tell a story. And then if I didn't look like Brad Pitt, they'd still give me a chance. So.
Hi, I'm Alana Lurie. I'm in the MCTC Cinema Division, specializing in directing. And I have 5 questions here. I think I'm just going to have to pick one and buttonhole y'all later with the others. So I guess I'll go with this one, kind of for all of you, but I guess especially for Jordan and Jason and Vanita. You talked a lot about, you mentioned, especially Jordan, showing them that you want it and being persistent. And I'm another one of these introverts who feels extremely awkward about doing that. And I imagine that there's a fine line between showing them that you want it in an appealing way and showing that you want it in a creepy / off-putting way. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that. I can't remember which of you said that you either sent or were sent emails. Oh, I think one of you mentioned someone an intern named Kate who sent tons and tons of interviews over the course of the year, or emails rather. What was in those emails? What did she do that didn't terrify you but made you like her?
She just kept like checking in, like, hey, are you looking for an intern still? Are you looking for an intern still? I'm still interested. If you're looking, it's more about like, I think Paula talked about like trying to make sure you have a handle on what the hiring person needs. Like I think a lot of young people are really concerned about their own needs. Like I don't want to work on weekends, or I don't want to work at night. It's like, well, what can you do to make my life easier is always the thing you should be thinking about in that process. And her emails were always written from that perspective. Like, hey, are you looking for an intern? Like, I'm free this summer. I'm free this fall. And so it wasn't annoying. And the truth is, like, I used to be freaked out about this too, right? Like, I didn't want to annoy news directors with constant calls or emails. But the truth is, if you're good, it's never going to be annoying. If you suck, it's annoying, right? Like, so if someone's good and they're pestering you and then you discover they're good, you're like, oh, I'm glad they kept emailing me. If you're terrible and you're pestering them, then you're annoyed. You know what I mean? So if you have the goods, you never can, I don't know if you can you be annoying if it's someone who's really good and you end up wanting to hire them? I don't know.
Well, think of the irony. You want to be a journalist, and to be a journalist, you have to be kind of pesky. So if you have sent out an email or a reel, and you think you've applied for a job, you haven't done anything. I get easily 70 to 100 applicants for a job, so you're just part of the pile. But it also, if you don't follow up with that with me, that tells me a lot too, because I also know that if you get hired, you'll be the reporter who's sitting there at noon and you'll say, how's your story? And say, well, I called the guy at 9 and I haven't heard back. And they think they are working the story because they made a phone call. So there is a connection between how persistent you are in trying to get a job and how persistent and successful you'll be as a journalist.
I think getting creative also in how you approach people. I told you I would drive up here to Minneapolis to talk to the news directors, but there are two other approaches I think that helped me get my job at KSTP. Number one, I made friends with the news director's assistant. She would answer his phone, and so I got to know Georgia really well. Hi, Georgia, how was your day? Yeah, what's going on? Is Dean busy? Yeah, what's a good time to talk to him? She got to know me. And she got to be a little bit of an advocate for me because I got to be friendly with her. The second thing I did was I I figured out that there were some key reporters at the station who'd been there a while. And I sent them my tape. And I said, hey, would you give me a critique? What do you think of what I do? I really admire you. Suck up to people. That really helps. So I got to know this reporter pretty well just through, and I had never met him. And he said, you know what, you have a good tape. And I said, hey, Lou, would you mind walking it over to Dean's office? I've sent, my tape to Dean. It's in a pile. Would you mind kind of going over there? And he did. And that was another way, going in sort of the back door also, because you're in this mass and you're just a number. So if a news director has someone walk a tape or say, here, look at this link, they're more likely to look at it and give it a little. Even though Lou didn't know me, I think I was able to build a relationship with him just through, hey, give me your advice. So being creative that way is also a way of kind of getting it.
I would agree with that too. It was a little different for me. To answer your question more directly, my emails were similar to Jason's. I'm still here. I still want to work. After that, those first initial phone calls and emails, there was a gap of maybe 3 weeks where I realized I should probably follow up with him. And for a while, it was a lot of copy paste. I would send the same thing over and over and over, and then I would more branch into, I'm still here, I'm willing to wait. When he did finally email me back, it freaked me out. Like, because it was like I was almost talking to someone who wasn't real, and all of a sudden he's there. And he asked me, he said, when are you available to meet? And I said, I'll meet you anytime any place, anywhere, and it felt a little weird saying that, but it was the truth. I would drop anything to go down there and meet them. And so that was my end. And when I got to Fox, I talked to other people about their ways, and we actually have a production assistant now who looked up the address of Fox at the time, walked into the front door, and waited outside till someone came out and gave his resume and demo tape. That's a little aggressive, but it worked for him. So it is a fine line, but once you meet these people and you gauge their responses, you'll figure it out. You'll see what works and what doesn't.
Hi, my name's Angel Key, and I'm a senior at St. Ben's. And I kind of have a two-part question. He kind of took my first one, so I'm the back end of it, sorry. So when you look for a reel, how long should you kind of talked about 3 stories. Is there any specific length and time that you look for, or anything like that in terms of sending it?
Well, you know, it's all about like how long is someone going to keep watching, right? So my view on this is always, if you're watching it and you're like, all right, 5 minutes of this is really good, and the next story I'm going to put on is going to be like mediocre, but I want it to be 7 minutes. Like, I'd rather have it be 5 minutes of good, and then make me call you and say like, hey, this is good stuff. So I think what you're always looking at with a reel is when is the point where someone's potentially going to stop watching. So it could never be, I mean, can it be too short? Well, yeah, if you have one story on there and that's it, I think you're going to look and say this person doesn't really know what they're doing. But I think you're better to have 2 awesome stories than 2 stories and 1 mediocre story. And usually it's TV news story length. Like college, sometimes your stories are longer than what we would put on TV, and that's cool. Like, but you know, a 2-minute story for us, like I get 1.5 minutes usually to do a story, 1:20 minutes, maybe 1:50 minutes, depending on the story. So that's about the length, don't you think, Steve? Like, I mean, you're never gonna not hire someone because, like, gosh, that tape was, boy, that was 12 minutes. I'm never gonna get those last 5 minutes of my day left. You just would stop watching when you're done with it, you know.
And I think as you get to the next levels of markets, you might get a closer look, and they already know you can do the business because you've been in it for a while. But if you're going to be at an entry-level market, you guys are all pretty raw, talented but raw, and there's a lot of applicants. And just as a matter of efficiency, if your reel is even 5 minutes, and there's 50 reels to look through, I mean, do the math, it's a lot of minutes. So the practical reality is that, you know, the first 10 stories or applicants you're looking at, they get a much longer look. And you find out that her tape's pretty good and his tape's pretty good. And then you can make some pretty quick assessments as you look at tapes 11, 14, 29. So I've always suggested people put really good stuff really high, because what if they hit eject at 30 seconds? You don't have the luxury of building to a crescendo, you know, 3 minutes in, because you might not get to that spot.
Okay, next question. Hi, my name is Jackie Phillips. I attend Augsburg College, and I'm a film major and a business management minor. And I was wondering, I'm kind of struggling with being a senior, trying to figure out grad school. Is it, you know, worth going, but work on work experience first? I'm kind of tugging with that right now.
If you went to grad school, do you know what it would be for? Is that kind of the...
Well, I'm interested in directing, editing, writing, producing, all of the above, and especially being in business. So probably going to the U, I know they have a good film program, or going out to New York or out west.
Have you done internships?
Yeah. I worked over at TPT.
I would say, well, I don't. Maybe you guys can help me with this, but I would say grad school is great, but unless you know what exactly you want to do, that's a lot of time and money that you're investing in it as well. Internships are great, and if you haven't been able to figure out where exactly you want to go, maybe it is trying another internship at either another TV station or a media video production company here to really try to hone in on where you want to go, because like I said, that is a lot of time and money that you're investing, and if you don't know exactly where you want to go, it is okay to take time and figure that out, and it is okay to not know where you're going. You just have to find people who can help you hone the skills or hone the path that you want to go on. Does that make sense? Does anyone want to add to that? It's just, I think internships are a really easy way to try to figure out what is for you and what is not for you. I think if you feel like you want to go a certain direction, then fine, lean in that direction and find a production house to intern at or something like that. Does anyone else want to?
My answer is no. Don't go to grad school. And I'm going to say that because, at least from a business standpoint, especially in the media environment, what's being taught in the grad schools versus what's practical, I think that there's a huge gap there right now. I want to make one point, if you don't mind. I've been listening a lot about reels and so forth, and one of the things that people are really struggling with in the world is just content and how do we create content. And I think innovation is not something that is led necessarily by experience. Mark Zuckerberg was nearly a dropout, so was Bill Gates. Twitter was invented by a bunch of 22-year-olds, and the world is getting flipped on its head not by people with MBAs, but with people with ideas. And I personally see something happening every single day, and that is that brands are doing something really amazing that they have no idea they're doing, and that is that they are creating these media outlets, i.e. Facebook pages and social media places that are attracting sometimes millions of people, and they have no idea what to do with them at all. General Mills or 3M or whomever might have 2 or 3 million people who they've attracted attention to, and they are larger than a cable channel, and they have no plans for content around. I shouldn't say no. They're clients of mine. They have awesome content. They don't have a real plan around that because they didn't really know what they were getting into. And so if I were getting into the news business these days, while I would certainly talk to the people on this stage, I might also start, I don't know about sending a reel, but I would start thinking about how is Medtronic going to create content that's going to keep patients and family of patients engaged with healthcare content? How am I, if I'm Pillsbury or if I'm Cheerios, going to talk about health and family and kids and education and all of this? And oh, by the way, if you want to have cereal, that's something we also do. This is a huge opportunity to be able to start to go to major brands. And by the way, this is not new. The soap operas were about soap, right? We're going back to the soap operas right now. And if I were in the news business, I would try and figure out, okay, what do I know how to do? I know how to create content in broadcast quality. I know how to go deep into stories. I know all about journalism. I have these people over here who are brands who have created their own audience, by the way. They're not just advertisers. If you go to a 3M and they have 3 million people following them and their Scotch brands on Facebook, I know a lot about what they need. And it's not just about trying to sell advertising to them. How do I get into partnership with this? And you see that now a lot with custom content. One of my favorite quick stories, and I'll stop, is Paul Douglas, who is a well-loved meteorologist for WCCO and in Chicago before that, was fired. How many years ago, Jason? I don't know, a few years ago.
6 years ago.
He was too expensive. I mean, let's just look at it. He was too expensive. So what did he do? He started a company called Weather Nation, which is out in Excelsior. Very beautiful offices, HD studios. And a lot of markets can't afford to have a weatherman or a weatherwoman on staff. And so now when they cut to Paul, they're cutting to Excelsior. Maybe they're in Fargo, maybe they're in Cedar Rapids, maybe they're whatever. And they have the most amazing technology. And Paul said, aha, me getting fired wasn't just me. It wasn't because he wasn't a great meteorologist. It was that the business model didn't work. So he set up HD studios in Excelsior, Minnesota, that now other markets around the country cut to during the broadcast, and they do the banter and everything else. And the studio, you should go visit it sometime, is amazing. So he completely reinvented a business model because he understood that you can't pay, every market can't afford to spend $250,000 or $500,000 to have a celebrity meteorologist. And so that alone, I mean, granted, this is a guy who's bought and sold companies many, many times over. But that to me is interesting, and if I were in the room, I'd start to think about how can I create interesting content that can entertain 1 million Facebook viewers, because I can guarantee you the people who got the 1 million people had no idea what they were going to do with them. And that to me is fascinating.
I was just going to say he's making 20 times what he made at the CCO.
Yeah.
I've got the next question. I'm Natalie Davis, and I'm a student at St. Cloud State University, but I'm an alum from St. Olaf College, so umyaya to you, Andrew. My question is this. So I know it's standard and kind of typical for students who graduate to go then get a job reporting or anchoring or whatever in maybe one of the smaller markets, so 100 to 200. Can you talk about then what the jump is like now to maybe a bigger market like 50 to 100? What's the change like? Because I know the the smaller markets, excuse me, maybe are a better learning experience. They know that they're recent graduates. They're more able to kind of coach you in. But then all of a sudden you jump to a larger market. What is that like? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, Boo and I were talking before about the same experience we both had when we started at our respective jobs. And I went from Milwaukee to Minneapolis, which Milwaukee's a pretty big market.
It is a very big market.
Yeah, but I was 27 when I started here, and I was definitely looked at as like, what is happening to WCCO? We've got this 27-year-old kid working here. And people looked at me like I had to be an idiot. Like there's no possible way I knew what I was doing. In the first several weeks, now again, I came from Milwaukee, like it's pretty big. I covered all, you name it, I covered it. Natural disasters, politics, crime, etc. But I came from kind of a flashy TV station. It was like a live, local, late-breaking, try to scare the crap out of you TV operation. And WCCO was not that. So they were like, what is this guy? He's not just standing there in a live shot. So they definitely looked at me. I felt just like Bua, like, God, maybe I don't deserve to be here. I don't know. Do I know what I'm doing? But then I covered, it's so nice to be back here at the U of M where you guys provided me the riots on the night the Gophers were in the Frozen Four. And I was on call that night if there were riots, and there were riots. And I was on call, and I was at work, like within 5 minutes of when they called me, because I was kind of hanging out downtown waiting to see if they were going to call me in. And I did a good job that night, and then I was fine. Then it was like, oh, okay, he's fine, and that was it. But it was horrible. Like you felt like you didn't belong. You doubted yourself. Am I good enough? Gosh, I'm with these great journalists. I will say what's different today is Bua's experience is more the norm because salaries have flattened out. So it used to be that a reporter in Milwaukee would be making $45,000 and you'd come to Minneapolis and make $65,000. Well, today it's much flatter. So in New York City, they're hiring people from Madison instead of people going from Madison to Milwaukee to Minneapolis to New York. Now you can go from market 60 or 70 straight to a top 5 market. So we in Minneapolis can't hire people from Milwaukee anymore. So we're hiring people from market 80, 90, 100, because that's who we can get. And that's what's different today, I think.
And I would say, like I said before, it's not a race to get to the top. That's a great goal to have, right? To get back to Minneapolis or wherever you want to go. But if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't rush it because I did not have the time I felt to grow. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have gone to a media market because I feel like for me, I needed to be a little more honed before I got here. And I made a lot of mistakes when I first got to CARE you're on air, so everybody sees your mistakes, that I wish I could take back, but I can't, and it's a learning experience. And I hear from people like Jason, or even viewers sometimes come up to me, "You've done such a great job growing," and it's great. It's a nice compliment, but it was a very tough transition, like I said before. I think not everyone could handle it. Some people will sink underneath all that pressure you have to perform with the likes of Vanita, Jason, Boyd Hoopert. I mean, I'm in a newsroom with Boyd Hoopert. He sits a stone's throw away from me, and that's intimidating. And I had to mentally get over it, that I wasn't good enough to be there, that I didn't deserve to be there. And it took a long time to be able to speak up in an editorial meeting and say, no, I don't think that's a good story. And I think you rob yourself of that when you try to rush it. So I take my time, learn, and keep learning.
I would just say, as a young reporter, I went from Duluth to Green Bay to Minneapolis, and the stakes are higher the larger the market. There's a lot more competition, and in the smaller markets, you'll be able to learn a lot more, because you have to do everything. If you start, the higher the market, the slower they're going to go in terms of, they don't want you to make a mistake on the air, and et cetera. But just one final, as a father than anything, enjoy the ride. And the panel here has touched on this. I mean, everybody, I'm going to get this first job. I want to get in and out as quick as I can and go up the deal. You're never going to have more fun than that first job in a small market, eating bad spaghetti in a watery sauce. At the time, it's a nightmare, but reflecting back on it, man, they are just going to be great times. So just enjoy it.
Steve's so right. My best friends in the business are the people from my first job in the Quad Cities, and that was, 17 years ago. But I remember sticking my ATM card in the machine so I could get cash to pay for rent. No, I had to put my credit card in. I had to put my credit card in the ATM so I could pay the $440 rent. It was so cheap, but we were so broke. And you had nothing else to do but hang out with each other, and it was great. It was great. It's so much fun.
Next question.
Being broke isn't fun.
Thank you so much for interesting speech. I'm Reina Mizuno and studying here as an exchange student. So I've been here for 2 months. So I'm not fluent in English, but your interesting speech make me start to thinking of working here. So my question is there any opportunity for you or me to take advantage of the fact that I came from other countries, and also would you be open to me in internship or something?
This is a PBS question. Absolutely for us. We do a lot of multi-language programming. One of the programs we produce is called ECHO. It's ECHO. And there are so many diverse communities in the Twin Cities that English is not their first language. And if you think what deep it would be in your life to move from someplace like Vietnam to Minnesota, and you're dealing with your first winter, you hear the tornado siren go off for the first time and you have no idea what that means. We try to provide a lot of programming that helps bridge those cultural divides, and I will get one or two is this all making sense? I will do 1 or 2 all-staff emails a day that will ask, does anyone in the building speak Mandarin? Does anyone in the building speak Cantonese? Does anyone in the building... Look at the website, tpt.org. I think I would love to talk to you personally, actually. That'd be great.
You'll have that chance. For those of you who might be hungry, lunch will be served in the Hole, THEWHOLE, which is 2 stories down, okay? One moment, the DVDs of the panel will be sent to all your schools. At the University of Southern California, it is a 2-week assignment. The students have to write up every panelist, what they said, what they thought of it, what they learned from it, okay? So the kids at USC are really lucky to see this. The DVDs also go all over the world, to India, to the Philippines, to the Fiji. I'm thinking I do international television, my day job, and so I send these all over. Let me, and I'll let you go, but I want to put something in context for you, as I will the students. Your moderator, Luke Klein, okay? Anyone ever hear of Dick Clark? Lou put Dick on the air at a station called WFIL Philadelphia, which no longer has that call, still on Channel 6. But Lou put him on the air, felt he was pretty good, got the ABC network to pick him up, and as they say, the rest is whatever. And Lou has a fascinating career with in all sorts of things, but we bumped into each other. I think he were in programming, and I don't know, I was out trying to get a job somewhere. Greg from the University of North Alabama is the chair of the Department of Communication, PhD. We first met him at Bradley and Peoria, and he's our bridge to academe, and goes all over the world for the U.S. State Department as a CIA spy. I've always approved that. Now, he helps stations all over the world learn about American broadcasting and helps them in technology, programming, sales, and whatever. And he's really an expert and a credit to the country. Steve Goodspeed, when I come to town, I make a trip here first. And I try to meet a lot of people, and I said, I want a small station or a smaller market. And the word came back like it was a chorus, Steve Goodspeed. And I think you all know what a terrific guy he is, and a brilliant and wonderful journalist, and how lucky they are to have him at WDIO. I had great difficulty getting through to Fox North, okay? Fox Sports North. I mean, trying to find it. I'm new to the computer, and I've only had one for 25 years. But I finally on the interstate find Miss Hirsch. Yeah, and I found she's a USC student, right? So I sent out an email, USC student. I said, "Come help us. We're going to have this. You're from USC." I sent the email. It was tough but I found some email. Never was answered. Finally, I called. I think you were a help to me, Jason, and we're so delighted to have you because 2 years out of college, the great school, St. Cloud, and I think they're really turning out fantastic students. Jason is an example. Mike Crucium, and by the way, I'm the clack who starts the employees, and I was looking at I always give the kids, will you please pay attention when we have guests, and I was looking at my little dumb, whatever you call it, dumb phone. And so that's why you didn't get applause, but it was a terrific. Can we have applause for Mike Christian right now? I thought it was a wonderful presentation. We didn't have radio until I started teaching again, I guess 4, 5, 6 years ago at USC. And everything came back with the death of radio and so and so. And so I went to the Broadcasters Association of California, and we built a radio night. And every radio night, we've always had someone from your great company. And by the way, Mr. Pitts is an old friend. We worked together a long, long time ago. And last Thursday, I got an email from somebody at KFI, your station, right? Yes. 630 clear channel, 50 kilowatt, and he said, we just hired one of your students. And she was somebody who wanted to stay in LA. I said, go to Bakersfield. No, I want to stay in LA. I said, what about radio? She said, I want television. I said, radio is a wonderful place to start or stay for the rest of your life. Go to a news station. And I mentioned KFI, KNX, KPCC, public radio. and she got a job at KFI, and I'm so pleased about that. Radio, and you heard how the video and so many things are going. Jason DeRusha is Mr. Television in, where are we? Minneapolis. Remember that famous, hello, I love you, Detroit, and somebody whispers in his ear. That was last weekend. And, but anyway, I think you found out how great he was and what a privilege it was to have him here, and he covers so many, and he's got a wonderful ability and projection and a real pro. I asked one of my NATPE friends, Joe Garbarino, who works on digital broadcasting for Sinclair. Everybody know what Sinclair is? It is a huge, wonderful company that Miss Pedden here is the general manager of its station in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you're going to see that station really grow, right? Keep your eye on it. We won't tell you why, but keep your eye on it. And when I asked Joe, I said, you really know digital, and I like to have guests every week at USC because, believe it or not, 3 hours, I can't talk that long. I run out of anything to say. I've said it like in 20 minutes. But it was, I said, who is the best person in all of the digi world that you've met since you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years? And he said, Andrew Eklund. And Andrew Eklund also has a wonderful dog, because when he comes at USC, it's at 10 o'clock at night here, and he brings the dog along and sips wine, and I send him more wine. When I called Minnesota Public Television, I got put through to Terry O'Reilly, and Terry O'Reilly is the executive vice president, and I said, we're going to do this panel, and explained it to him. He said, I'll be glad to do it. I said, no, I don't want you. You're too old. When you're my age, you can say that, you don't get hit up by the HR department. And I said, do you have somebody younger? I said, because it's important for the students, because they sympathize and they identify with them. We can't have everybody suits or, as old as Greg. So, Greg is a kid. And he said, we have a really bright guy here. And Mr. Gillette was the one he mentioned. We're so happy to have you. Friends at KSTP, God bless Hubbard Broadcasting. I said, we need somebody, if you can help us, because there are opportunities at television stations, not only for news, weather, and sports, but for tech. And those of you who are now what they call digital natives, you know more about it than chief engineers did, right? 10 years ago, I would say, right? And it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot to do, and you'll see more of it today. And they said, well, Charlie Ann Hunter is absolutely the best person for that, so we were so fortunate to get her. Paula Pedden, I wanted a woman, I wanted a general manager. I'm kind of blunt when I call people. They say, why do you want me? I said, I want you because you're good, and I want you because you're African American or Asian, or we don't want all, middle-aged American, Caucasian males up there. Okay, we want to have the panel.
I am not.
Sorry about that, Steve. But we want to have the panel look like the audience. And the audience knows that there's opportunities for them. And so that's why we really build these. And Paula got on the phone, and the kind of person I love, I said, would you do this? Because so many people, let me get back to you. I got to check corporate. I got to go to PR and all that. She said, hey, yeah, sure. And then we knew about 50 people in common because we both in the business. I precede her by 50 years, but we've been in the business a while. When talking to people about digital goings on, the name Vanita Salker kept coming up. She's number one, a great personality, an accepted journalist in the market, and they said she's working at the Star Trib. I said, what's she doing there? Selling papers? They said, no, she is the video reporter of the Star Trib. And again, I want you to know There are opportunities in radio, in cable networks, not in so many, and in newspapers now. And one of the real pioneers is Vanita. Buazong, they said, you want to have a good panel? I said, yeah. They said, get Bua. And of course, I try to get somebody from every station. If you notice, every station is here except one. Of the major stations, the KMSP, okay? But we're represented by Fox, by Mr. Austin. So anyway, so you all know the reason for it, and all your schools will be sent the DVD. If you want one, email me, I think most of it. So it goes both to the faculty and it goes to career services. And thank you so much, and a great big hand. Everybody go downstairs and have lunch. Okay? Down for lunch.
Just 2 reminders, lunch downstairs in the